Lesson 3.2, Complex Numbers. How do you define and use the imaginary unit I? There were 5 problems assigned for independent practice. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. Problem number 3, I need to get the x by itself. So I need to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. I chose to take the square root, which means I need a plus or minus because I chose to take the square root. I need to separate the negative 1 from the 13. So x is plus or minus. The square root of negative 1 is I. We need to prime factorize 13, and that's actually prime, so it does not prime factorize. So square root of 13 is just the square root of 13. So this is my final answer. Problem number 4, I need to move the minus 8, so we're going to add 8 to each side. So I have x squared equaling a negative 28. I need to take the square root of the x squared, so I can get the x to be by itself. The square root of x squared is x. I chose to take the square root. If you choose to take the square root, you need a plus or minus. You need to separate the negative 1 from the 28. So x is plus or minus. The square root of negative 1 is an I. And we need to prime factorize the 28. So if you're going to prime factorize the 28, that's 2 times 2 times 7. Remember, if they pair up, they get to escape. So the square root of 28 is 2 square root 7. Rewriting this, it is plus or minus. You said the 2 escaped. The I always comes immediately after the number. The square roots, if there are any square roots left, come immediately after the I. Problem number 5. Let's go ahead and solve for x squared. So I'm going to add 7 to each side. So 3x squared is a negative 24. Divide both sides by 3. I've got x squared equaling a negative 8. I need the x by itself, so you got to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. I chose to take the square root, which means you need the plus or minus. You need to separate the negative from the 8. X is plus or minus. The square root of negative 1 is I. You need to prime factorize the 8, and if we need to see that, that's 2 times 2 times 2, because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 more is 8. If they pair, they escape. So this pair of 2 escaped. That 2 had to stay inside. The 2 in the I cannot be written I2. It's 2I. So your final answer is plus or minus the 2 I's, and the other 2 had to be left inside the square root. Problem number 7. We just need to get the x by itself. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. You chose to take the square root. If you choose to take the square root, you need the plus or minus. I need to separate the negative 1 from the 38. X is plus or minus. The square root of negative 1 is I. I need to prime factorize the 38. The prime factorization of 38 is 2 times 19. 19 is prime. 2 can't pair with anybody, so it's just the square root of 38. So my answer is plus or minus I root 38. Last problem, I need to get the x to be by itself, so we're going to subtract the 11 from each side. I get x squared equaling a negative 8. I need to take the square root of x squared. The square root of x squared is x. You chose to take the square root, which means I need the plus or minus. I need to separate the negative 1 from the 8. So x is plus or minus. The square root of negative 1 is I. We need to prime factorize the 8. Prime factorizing the 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. Remembering if they can pair up, they escape. So a pair of 2's got to escape, but 1 could not. So my answer is plus or minus. You got to say the number before the I, and the square root always comes at the very, very end. So my answer is plus or minus 2I root 2.